My name is Ellise Smith. I am in the UES Urban Education Studies doctoral program at IUPUI. When I came to IUPUI in the fall of 2018, I worked with Dr. Lori Patton Davis. And at that time, she was coming, being appointed as the 43rd president of ASH, which is an educational conference. And she was the first Black female president of the organization in its 43-year history at the time. I became her presidential intern. And while working with her and her intern, I also was doing work as a graduate student. So she brought to me and said, hey, you'll be working on some projects. One includes the White Racial Literacy Project. And that project was an intentional effort through the Chancellor's Office, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, for a welcoming campus initiative that brought in scholars who did work around whiteness. And these scholars I also identified as white. So whether it was looking at through the lens of children, whether it was looking at the lens of fragility, there were big names in that study that will come to campus to give lecture series where they will talk to administration, faculty and staff, students, and then also students of color and people of color. So in these separate sessions where she used the caucus model, it was to allow people to feel comfortable to tell their truths. There are different individuals who may identify as white who are racist just as well as some who may not be racist. And because of that, instead of putting the hard work on those who identify as non-white, having to say, hey, this is why this is problematic. This is what we're going through. This is what we're struggling with. Dr. Patton Davis looked at an opportunity to find funding and grants that would support bringing out these speakers. They would speak to these different audiences on different topics around it, allowing them to say, how is it that we can help you all see what the issue is? How can we eradicate this ideology that, race and racism is happening, especially on a campus? How can we create a welcoming environment? So my role in that space was to help facilitate meetings, definitely did a lot of social media and website building and work, working with the speakers, working with the team, working with individuals who attended the events to help ensure that they understood what the value of the project was. There was definitely pushback. A lot of people felt that, they were being centered and targeted, which I think just over time, it kind of showed us that a lot of people were feeling some kind of way. They were stuck in their own feelings and thought processes behind us trying to help them do the work. So instead of a person of color coming to a room telling them you've done X, Y, and Z, we try to use scholars who identify as white, who has done the research, who knows how to communicate with that community to say, look, we're not saying it's all of you, but for the people who are here and listening, how can you help change your mindset? How can you move forward and help your communities learn that we just have a lot of work to do? We have to unpack the fact that a lot of you are living in privilege, and it's very violent and toxic to other people who don't have that same privilege. So we're not asking you to denounce your identities as a white person. We're asking you to understand what privileges you have and how that could create barriers for others who don't have it. So instead of them telling you that, we're going to bring scholars who have done the research, who have had the conversations and dialogues to show you in a different way, so we can take some of that pressure off of the people who may not have those identities. So after working with Dr. Patton Davis on the White Racial Literacy Project and other projects throughout my time as a graduate assistant with her, it helped me continue to further my own research. I work on looking at the experiences of fat bodies or plus size bodies and how that's tied into European beauty standard, which is another subset of race and racism, because certain identities, especially phenotypically, are not accepted, because of my skin color, because of my size. That has literally created a problem in the healthcare industry, whether we're talking about fashion, popular culture, media. You don't see a lot of bodies that look like mine. You don't see big fat females on TV like you used to. We're starting to see a shift, but I'm a part of that shift. So for the last 4 years, I have been doing research on this topic. But after working with Dr. Patton Davis, it helped me more on a research level to say, what questions should I ask, instead of, what does it feel like to live in this body? How is it, now I'm asking questions that are associated with how is it that we only see one particular body in certain spaces? Historically, when we think of the theater, you don't see a lot of women that look like me or bodies that look like mine. When we think about the fashion industry, we don't see a lot of bodies that look like mine. When we look on TV, even for political correspondence, you don't see a lot of us that look like me. Sports, you don't see a lot of people that look like me, but what it helped me do was go deeper and ask those questions, because I know there are people who are doing that type of stuff who do look like me. They just don't get the representation because people don't like the way they look. And they already assume that because you have a particular body type or racial identity, you fit into these negative subsets, because that's what historically we have seen portrayed. So working with Dr. Patton Davis showed me how to interrogate, how to problematize, how to move further beyond just the surface to get to the core of what is the issue, because it's almost like a tree. You can continue to cut off branches, and you can continue to purge and prune, but at the end of the day, until you get to the root of the issue, that thing is going to continue to grow in certain ways. So it allowed me to not seek a certain answer, because we think in our mind we already know what the answer is, but to listen. And once you listen, you start to see the commonalities, you start to see the different trends and threads that are there, and then you help to unpack them. So I learned that I can also humanize research, I can decolonize research by looking at the research. A lot of times we hear don't do me search, which means you're too close to the research. But at the same time, I'm a big believer and proponent of, why would I research something that I have no identities that line up with it? None. Versus researching that it's something I do have identities that line up with, but going further and ask people who also align up with this. So you see that it's not, a isolated situation, that we're not a monolith, that it's not the exact same experience, but at the same time, we're telling you based on one group of people picking what they want to see, it puts the rest of us to the side. So it allowed me to challenge certain ideas and be okay with the fact people will push back, and people will literally look at you and say your research is stupid, which we hear growing up, no question is a stupid question. Some people really think that you're asking stupid questions. Me asking for people to understand that bigger bodies deserve a lifestyle of happiness, that not everybody who is big is unhealthy, that just because I may be of a bigger size, that I am not incompetent, I don't have to perform for you, I can still be myself. I'm hoping to free a lot of that mental anxiety for a lot of those people based on my research, so that they can live and create spaces as well. Because I've been dealing with this since I was a child. And there's a lot of children out there who's dealing with it who won't have the same strength that I have, because I decided to go and be a researcher about it, not just someone who's like, oh, I'm gonna change so that the world can be accepting of me, versus the world just realizing that I exist as well. So I learned that you have to persevere, you have to persist as you resist, and you have to make sure that whatever you do with an authentic heart and your authentic self.